All right, in this video, we're going to describe the parts list and board feet calculations of the door. All right, so on the screen you see again a 3D model of the door. All right, it's made out of many components. So if we actually look at our parts list, just on a regular sheet of paper, I've listed them out as style A, B, and then mid style C, rail D and E, panel P1, P2. Okay, so going back to our 3D model. The stiles, the outer stiles and the top and bottom rails are 2 inches. Okay, so that's something we should know already. And then of course we define the mid stile as 1.5. All right, so some of the challenge that we're going to be faced with is determining the length of these, because if I pull this out, you can see that there is an additional tongue on each one of those ends of the rails. Okay, only the rails. Okay, so if I pull out the stile, you can see the stile just has a groove all the way down it, indicated by that little channel right there. And so again, those are going to fit inside. So what we need to do is to compensate for the tongue, and actually we need to do that on the mid stile as well, because there is a tongue on both ends. The panels are going to fit inside all those grooves. So you don't see it here, but we need to make our panel a little bit, well, that's a pretty good view. The panel is going to be a little bit bigger. Maybe if I go to my front view, we can see that. So the panel is going to be a little bit bigger. It's going to fit in those grooves, so we have to compensate for that. All right, so how do we do that? So if you take a look at that surface right there, that surface defines the length between the two stiles. So the length between the two stiles, but then we have to add that tongue in there. So if I pull that out, now these two tongues combined are 7/8 of an inch. So that's really our magic number of 7/8 of an inch. And again, it's just the components as stated here, the two rails, and then of course you can see the mid stile here. Okay. All right, so if our total door width of, well, the width of our door is 12 inches, and then we have 2-inch stile here and a 2-inch stile, so we would subtract that from 8. So if I do a little bit of math, so if I do 12 minus my 2-inch stile minus my 2-inch stile, okay, that would equal 8 inches. Okay, so if I click on that surface right there, that is 8 inches of width. But now we need to add, okay, I'm going to add my 7/8 inches to that. So 8 and 7/8 is going to be the width, or the length, I should say, of my rails. All right, so now if we take a look at, I just went ahead and filled that in. So my rail and rail D and rail E, the lengths are 8 and 7/8. So I included that. So let's go back to our 3D model and really to examine the panels and eventually the mid stile. Okay, so let me just push this off here, and then let's take a look. You can see that my panels, each panel are the same, plus they are the same height as, or same length as the mid stile. Okay, so all three components have the same height or length to them. Okay, now we just got to talk about the width. A little bit of math there to figure that out, and I will show you how we come up with the value for the width of those panels. All right, so let's talk about the width of those panels. All right, quite a bit of math here to figure this out. All right, so maybe I should just back up here a little bit, put our door kind of back together. All right, so if we take a look, if our width of our entire door is 12, okay, and then if we subtract away the stiles, 2 inches and 2 inches, we left with 8 inches here, okay, but we have this mid stile, so we have to subtract that 1.5 inches out of that as well. Okay, so if we do that math, I have it right here. So again, here's our width that we subtract stile A, stile B, and then mid stile. Okay, we're going to be left with 6.5. Okay, now Now, what does that 6.5 represent? Well, it represents the area in between the mid-stile and rail on both sides, okay? Does not include the extra 7/8 yet. Okay, so we really have to be clear on that. Okay, so what we have to do here is take our 6.5 and we need to divide it by 2 because we have 2 areas. We have 2 panels. Okay, and then if we do that math, we'd end up with 3.25. Okay, and then now we have to take into consideration that panel's got to fit into grooves, and so we have to make it 7/8 inch wider than that, and so that ends up being 4.125 inches in width. Okay, so now here is our panel area in between here. We define that as 3.25. However, it's got to fit into the groove, so we have to add 7/8. All right, so now I'm going to add the panel width here as 4.125. Both these panels are the same, so we can add those to the table there. Okay, next we'll talk about the length of those. Actually, it's going to be the height, but it'll fall under L. All right, so let's talk the height, and actually our stile, mid-stile height is the same as the panels. You just can't see it when I hover over here. All right, so let's take a look at this. If the height of our overall door is 13 and we subtract away the bottom stile and the top stile, okay, the 2 inches piece, that ends up being 13 minus 2 minus 2, which ends up 9. Okay, so that's a good value. Now we got to ensure that we include that 7/8 because that panel fits in that groove. So then we have to add 7/8 to this. So we end up with 9 7/8 for the height. All right, so going back to the parts list, this would be 9 7/8. And then what about the mid-stile? Okay, the mid-stile, of course, is going to be the same, so that would be 9 7/8. And we already know that this was 1.5 inches. Okay, you should get the rest of those values for the door parts list. Okay, that's how we derive for the length of some of those unique components. Okay, moving on to the board feet calculations. I already went ahead and, well, I started my labeling here, but you could go ahead and fill that in. But here's the same process. Here's our formula, TW&L over 144. So we substitute those values in for TW&L. We get right here. And then once we do that calculation for TW&L, that goes right here. And then once we do that math, our board feet would go into those blanks. Okay, very, very similar process to the previous components, such as the face frame and left and right sides. Okay, so that concludes the parts list and board feet calculations.